Only a fool trips over the same stone twice, and Florentino Pérez did exactly that. Don't believe it? Take a look. On the 24th of May 2000, Real Madrid defeated Valencia 3-0 to lift their 8th Champions League. Just weeks later, on the 16th of July 2000, Florentino Pérez became president of Real Madrid, and from that moment on, everything changed. Madrid had just won Europe. They looked stable, they looked complete, they looked like a club with a clear project. But Florentino believed that wasn't enough, so he pulled the trigger. Luis Figo, Zinedine Zidane, Ronaldo, David Beckham. Between 2000 and 2003, Madrid launched a revolution. The idea was simple: mix the biggest stars on the planet with homegrown icons like Raúl, Guti, and Iker Casillas. Football royalty, global power, total dominance. Florentino delivered on every promise, but by February 2006 he resigned. The Galactico dream had not delivered what was expected. Does that sound familiar? Fast forward to the 4th of January 2024. Real Madrid beat Barcelona 4-1 in Riyadh to win the Spanish Super Cup. Vinicius Jr. scored a hat-trick. Rodrigo added the fourth. In May, Madrid lifted La Liga number 36 with 4 games to spare. Ancelotti's side became the best defence in the league, broke clean sheet records, and topped the scoring charts. On the 1st of June 2024, Real Madrid conquered Europe again. Champions League number 15, a 2-0 win over Borussia Dortmund at Wembley. Carvajal scored. Vinicius delivered. MVPs everywhere. Epic nights against Manchester City.
And he squeezed it across, and Ederson has...
And Bayern Munich along the way. Then came the 6th Super Cup of Europe. August 2024, Warsaw. Real Madrid beat Atalanta. Valverde scored. Mbappe scored. Bellingham took MVP, and in December Madrid crowned it all by winning the Intercontinental Cup 3-0 against Pachuca, becoming world champions for the 9th time.
Chance for the opening goal here for Real Madrid. Mbappe!
5 trophies, 1 year, total dominance. Kylian Mbappe, Vinicius Jr., Jude Bellingham, Federico Valverde, Luka Modric, Thibaut Courtois, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Alvaro Carreras, Dean Huijsen, Galacticos 2.0. On paper, unstoppable. In reality, they have only watched Barcelona lift trophies. Florentino did it again, so the question is simple. How did the biggest football club in the world lose all respect? Was it Florentino's fault? Was it the players? Was it the dressing room? Or was it a mistake we have already seen before? Stay right here, because in this video we're exposing what nobody wants to talk about in the Real Madrid crisis. In Florentino Pérez's second spell as Real Madrid president, there is an uncomfortable truth that cannot be ignored. The club have gone through 6 full seasons without winning a single trophy. That is an alarming number for a club that measures itself only by success. The worst of all was clearly the 2018-2019 season. But other years also left deep scars. In 2009-2010 came the famous Alcorconazo, a 4-1 defeat on aggregate that still hurts today.
Del cuarto ante la salida de Dudek.
In 2020-2021, it was Alcoyano, knocking Madrid out of the Copa del Rey with a 2-1 loss that became another national embarrassment. In 2019, the collapse was fast and brutal. In the space of 1 single week in March, Real Madrid lost everything. First, they were knocked out of the Copa del Rey semi-finals by Barcelona with a 3-0 defeat at the Bernabeu.
Que iba a transformar al Opanenka Luis Suárez.
Days later, they lost again at home in La Liga, this time 1-0 against the same rival. And to complete the nightmare, Ajax destroyed them in the Champions League with a 4-1 win, once again in Madrid. 3 defeats at the Bernabeu in a row, all decisive, all humiliating. Florentino Pérez was completely exposed. That season became a symbol of chaos on the bench. Julen Lopetegui was sacked in November. Santiago Solari did not survive beyond March. Zinedine Zidane was forced to return as an emergency solution. 3 managers in 1 season, all signs of a project without direction or stability. And now, the worrying part is that the current situation looks even darker. Why? Because it feels like Florentino Pérez failed to learn from those mistakes. To really understand how Real Madrid ended up here again, we need to go back to the very beginning of his first presidency. That is where the pattern starts. That is where this story truly begins. We have to go back years to understand where this story really begins, when Real Madrid decided to let Claude Makelele leave the club. Makelele was the perfect holding midfielder for Madrid. After shining at Celta de Vigo, he arrived at Real Madrid to bring balance, control, and authority to the midfield. And he delivered exactly that. He helped build play from deep, recovered the ball, covered space, and gave security to everyone around him. The entire team leaned on Makelele. He was the silent engine that made the Galacticos work. And that is where Florentino Pérez made a historic mistake. For one reason or another, Makelele was allowed to leave. And from that moment, Madrid began a slow free fall. Without balance or hierarchy in midfield, the team stopped functioning. The stars up front did not defend, the spaces opened up, and rivals began to tear Madrid apart with ease. The Galactico crisis officially began in the 2000 to 2001 season, when Florentino Pérez signed Luis Figo, paying €61 million to trigger his release clause from FC Barcelona.
De hacer posible lo que en el fútbol hace tan solo unas semanas parecía imposible, que Luis Figo, un azulgrana de pro, fichara por el eterno rival, el Real Madrid.
With Figo in the squad, Madrid managed to win La Liga ahead of Deportivo La Coruña, but everything else went wrong. They were knocked out of the Champions League semi-finals by Bayern Munich.
4 minutos, jogada ensaiada na cobrança de falta.
Lost the Intercontinental Cup to Boca Juniors. Were beaten by Galatasaray in the European Super Cup, and were embarrassingly eliminated from the Copa del Rey by Toledo, a Segunda B side. The following season, 2001 to 2002, was better, at least on the surface. Florentino began the campaign by signing Zinedine Zidane.
Falta un día para la noche Z, la noche de Zidane. Falta un día para su debut en España y lo estrena Antena 3. Mañana miércoles a las 10.
And ended it by winning the Champions League. Madrid beat Bayer Leverkusen in the final, thanks to one of the most iconic goals in football history from Zidane. That season also brought the Spanish Super Cup and the European Super Cup, beating Real Zaragoza and Feyenoord respectively. But even that season had a deep scar. The infamous Centenariazo. Real Madrid were desperate to win the Copa del Rey to celebrate their 100th anniversary, with the final played at the Santiago Bernabeu. Instead, Deportivo La Coruña won 2-1 and lifted the trophy in Madrid's own stadium. To make it worse, Madrid finished only third in La Liga, behind Valencia and Deportivo. The 2002 to 2003 season was the year Ronaldo Nazario finally arrived at Real Madrid.
Corresponder con muchos goles, muchas jugadas bonitas, todo. Intentaré hacer todo para corresponder a la expectativa.
The former FC Barcelona striker had long been a dream signing for Florentino Pérez, and after his sensational World Cup in Korea and Japan, Florentino got his man. That season ended with a La Liga title, finished just 2 points ahead of Real Sociedad, and an Intercontinental Cup victory, beating Club Olimpia 2-0. But once again, the cracks were impossible to ignore. Madrid fell in the Champions League semi-finals against Juventus and were knocked out of the Copa del Rey by RCD Mallorca in the quarter-finals. Even in a title-winning year, the project looked fragile. The 2003 to 2004 season marked a turning point, and not a good one. David Beckham arrived, completing the Galactico dream on the commercial side. But at the same time, the club made 3 decisions that would define the collapse. Vicente Del Bosque, Fernando Hierro, and Claude Makelele all left the club. Del Bosque had the backing of the fans and the dressing room, yet Madrid chose to replace him with Carlos Queiroz. The result was a historic failure. Madrid won the Spanish Super Cup against Mallorca, but that was it.
Roberto Carlos, quick thinking to an open.
They lost the Copa del Rey final to Real Zaragoza, finished 4th in La Liga, and were humiliated in the Champions League quarter-finals by AS Monaco, led by former Madrid striker Fernando Morientes. A season with no real success, and the Galactico shine was fading fast. 1 year later, in the 2004 to 2005 season, Florentino doubled down. He signed another Ballon d'Or winner in Michael Owen, and appointed Jose Antonio Camacho to restore order. The squad was reinforced with Walter Samuel, Jonathan Woodgate, and Thomas Graveson. It looked like a reset. It lasted 3 months. Camacho resigned after clashing with Florentino. Mariano Garcia Ramon took over, followed by Vanderlei Luxemburgo, but nothing changed. Madrid lost La Liga to Barcelona, were eliminated from the Copa del Rey by Real Valladolid, and exited the Champions League in the round of 16 against Juventus. Another dark season. The final Galactico year came in 2005 to 2006. This was Florentino's last bullet. He kept Luxemburgo and attempted to refresh the squad with younger faces: Robinho, Julio Baptista, Sergio Ramos, Antonio Cassano, and others. The idea was clear: inject energy, challenge the veterans, and calm the egos. It did not work. Luxemburgo was sacked in December. Juan Ramon López Caro was promoted from Castilla, but the spiral could not be stopped. In February, after a defeat to Mallorca, Florentino Pérez resigned, ending his first presidency. Madrid finished a second straight season without trophies. Barcelona beat them again in La Liga. Zaragoza eliminated them in the Copa del Rey semi-finals. And Arsenal knocked them out of the Champions League in the round of 16. The Galactico dream was officially over, not because of a lack of stars, but because the balance, the structure, and the respect for football basics had been sacrificed along the way. Florentino left, but when he returned in 2009, Pérez ushered in the golden era of Real Madrid. His second spell was defined by elite signings like Cristiano Ronaldo, Karim Benzema, Gareth Bale,
Three in the box waiting for the cross, and it was Bale!
Luka Modric, and Toni Kroos. The silverware speaks for itself. 6 Champions Leagues 2014, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2022, 2024, 5 Club World Cups, 5 La Liga titles, 5 UEFA Super Cups, 3 Copa del Rey trophies, and 5 Spanish Super Cups. An era of dominance few clubs will ever match. But here is the uncomfortable truth. After that glorious cycle, Florentino made the same mistake again. In his obsession with total control, the president gradually took on the role of sporting director himself, and the consequences are now obvious on the pitch. For years, Madrid's management has been sold as flawless, almost corporate perfection, where every move follows a master plan. On paper, everything looks clean and powerful, but football's not won on balance sheets or headlines. It is won on the grass, and right now, Real Madrid show clear structural weaknesses. And those weaknesses are not the fault of the coach or the players, but of the man who decides which profiles arrive and which gaps are ignored. The clearest example is the refusal to sign a true defensive midfielder after the departure of Toni Kroos. Losing a player who controlled tempo, brought calm, and gave meaning to the game, demanded an immediate response in the market. This was not about luxury, it was about survival. Instead, Florentino chose not to reinforce the most important area of the pitch, leaving the team without a reference point in midfield. Yes, the arrival of Kylian Mbappé is a massive boost. Having Mbappé is always a good thing, but football is about balance. You could not ignore the need to replace Kroos when he left. Both things were required. Florentino Pérez has built an institutionally powerful club, but he has neglected sporting planning. Even worse, he has lacked the humility to fully trust specialists who understand the game better than he does in certain areas. Running Real Madrid without listening to what the football actually needs leads directly to moments like this: a deep crisis, a collective failure. Madridismo is not asking for miracles. It is asking for planning, structure, and common sense. Right now, all three are missing in a project where the president decides too much and gets it wrong more often than before, and the consequences of that planning have been devastating. Last season, Carlo Ancelotti saw the problem coming long before the collapse became public. Very early on, he warned his staff that the project would fail if the squad did not raise its defensive effort. This was not nostalgia from an old-school coach. It was evidence-based. Ancelotti dug into the numbers: total distance covered, sprint intensity, comparison with top opponents. The conclusion was uncomfortable. Real Madrid were not matching elite teams physically. The warning signs were already there. Kylian Mbappé was squeezed into the lineup. Rodrigo stayed protected after a strong season. The midfield was left untouched despite losing Toni Kroos, the player who gave structure and calm to everything. At the back, injuries returned. Eder Militao fell, but the real shock was losing Dani Carvajal. His absence exposed the lack of planning, with no real replacement ready. Asensio appeared as an emergency fix. Aurelian Tchouaméni covered holes when needed, and Jesus Vallejo disappeared completely, barely seeing the pitch. Then came the reality checks. The Spanish Super Cup final was brutal. FC Barcelona smashed Real Madrid 5-2. In La Liga, the Bernabeu delivered another punch, a 4-0 defeat that confirmed this was no coincidence. These were not bad days, they were structural failures. April finished the job. In the Champions League and the Copa del Rey, Madrid were clearly below Arsenal and Barcelona. Arsenal dominated them over 2 legs, winning 5-1 on aggregate. In the Copa final, Barca struck again. Madrid fought, briefly turned the game around, but still collapsed and lost 3-2. 4 Clásico defeats in one season. A humiliating 12-4 aggregate. This team did not press, it did not run, it did not control games. Mbappe and Vinicius never truly clicked. Endrick was sidelined, the structure collapsed piece by piece, and this season, everything finally broke. Florentino's impatience launched a new project with Xabi Alonso that was flawed from day one. Poor squad planning, stubborn decisions, and a crisis that was no longer hidden, only delayed. Xabi Alonso never wanted this to start the way it did. His appointment was confirmed on 25th May 2025, and within 24 hours, he was standing in front of the cameras as Real Madrid's new manager. Not because the timing was right, but because the club decided it had to be done. Alonso had asked for patience. He wanted a clean beginning, a full pre-season, time to build. Not a rushed start inside the chaos of the FIFA Club World Cup. But Florentino chose speed over structure. At his presentation, Alonso barely hid his discomfort. "These are the circumstances," he said, flat and cold. "And since that's the case, I'll see it as an opportunity." Those words already sounded like a warning. To be fair, the first signs were not all bad. During the Club World Cup, Madrid looked sharper. They pressed higher, they ran more, the team finally showed energy. Arda Güler stepped up as the creative mind. Gonzalo Garcia surprised everyone. When Mbappe played, his presence was undeniable. Tchouaméni finally looked like the link between defence and midfield Madrid had been missing. They swept aside Salzburg, beat Juventus with authority, and handled Dortmund. For a moment it felt like something was forming, then reality hit. In the semi-final, against a real giant, everything collapsed. Paris Saint-Germain, the champions of Europe, tore Madrid apart. A brutal 4-0 defeat. No excuses, no balance, no control. The defensive cracks were wide open. And worse than the result was what followed behind the scenes. Alonso's relationship with Vinicius Jr. began to fracture. First, he considered moving him to the right wing. Then came the bombshell. Alonso planned to leave Vinicius out of the semi-final entirely. Only a last-minute injury forced a tactical reshuffle. The damage was done. Trust was broken. At first, it seemed the storm had passed. The 2002-2026 season started brilliantly. Madrid won 13 of their first 14 matches, 7 straight victories, only 4 goals conceded. Everything looked calm again, but it was an illusion. The collapse came suddenly. A devastating 5-2 defeat to Atletico Madrid. Led by a masterclass from Julian Alvarez, the mask fell off. Even during the winning run, the foundations were already cracking. Behind the scenes, Alonso was fighting another battle. Squad planning. New signings arrived: Trent Alexander-Arnold, Dean Huijsen, Alvaro Carreras, and Franco Mastantuono. Good players, but none of them were what Alonso needed most. He wanted a controller, a tempo setter, a leader in midfield. Martin Zubimendi was his obsession, his trusted man from Real Sociedad. Arsenal got him. Madrid said no. The board insisted the midfield was complete. Alonso knew it wasn't, and he knew that decision would cost him. Then there was the weight of history. Alonso followed Carlo Ancelotti, a master of egos, perhaps the best in the world at managing stars. Alonso had never faced a dressing room like this before. So he tightened control, stricter rules, less freedom, more discipline. He demanded punctuality, limited access to training, cut down the presence of entourages. He wanted professionalism. Some players felt suffocated. Then came 26th October, El Clásico, Bernabeu. Madrid beat Barcelona 2-1. A year earlier, they had been humiliated 4-0 in the same fixture. It felt like proof, like confirmation Alonso was right. But the match ended in chaos. In the 72nd minute, Vinicius was substituted. His reaction exploded across the stadium. Cameras caught him shouting as he walked off, "I'm leaving, right? I'm leaving." From that moment, everything changed. Alonso had already benched him against Oviedo and Marseille. Now the tension was public. Executives started to panic. Vinicius's contract runs until 2027 and renewal talks were already fragile. Days later, Vinicius apologized to everyone except his manager. Other players noticed. They smelled weakness. They saw a coach standing alone without full backing from above. At Real Madrid, that is fatal. Then came the collapse. Liverpool beat them 1-0. Rayo Vallecano held them 0-0. Elche drew 2-2. Olympiacos almost embarrassed them. Girona drew again. A brief 3-0 win over Athletic Club gave hope. Then Celta beat them at the Bernabeu. Three days later, Manchester City finished the job. Injuries made it worse. 8 first-team players missing against City. Mbappe sidelined. Executives began questioning everything, including Alonso's decision to remove Antonio Pintus, the fitness coach trusted by Zidane and Ancelotti. Under pressure, Alonso softened. More days off. Fewer rules. More protection for Vinicius. It was too late. He survived until Christmas thanks to wins over Alaves, Talavera and Sevilla. The squad still mostly backed him. Players adapted to his heavy video analysis. But everyone knew the truth. At Real Madrid, managers don't survive Novembers like that. Before Christmas, Alonso told the press to stay calm. 2026 began with a 5-1 win over Betis. Then came the Supercopa. Madrid barely escaped Atletico in the semi-final. In the final, Alonso went defensive, conservative, afraid. Barcelona punished them. After the final, Madrid players ignored Alonso's order to form a guard of honour for Barca. A public humiliation, a silent mutiny. Xabi Alonso left Real Madrid disappointed in the players, in the board, and in himself. Sources say the project was poisoned from within, players ignoring diet plans, constant leaks to the press, a small but powerful group refusing to accept authority. 3 names kept appearing: Vinicius Jr., Jude Bellingham, and Federico Valverde. That is the real issue. At Real Madrid, the egos are in control. Less than 48 hours after stepping into the role vacated by Xabi Alonso and being presented to the public, Arbeloa faced his first real test. With key absences and Franco Mastantuono returning to the starting 11, Real Madrid suffered another humiliating blow. They were eliminated from the Copa del Rey after a 3-2 defeat against Albacete, a Segunda Division side, at the Carlos Belmonte Stadium in the round of 16. Now we have to talk about the real man responsible for this catastrophe, and his name is Florentino Pérez. Why sack Xabi Alonso at that moment? With a run of very winnable matches ahead, a Copa del Rey tie against a Segunda Division side, a league game against Levante, second from bottom, then a Champions League match against Monaco, sitting 17th. Maybe Madrid would have dropped points anyway, but it is a fair and necessary question to ask Florentino Pérez. After the humiliation in Albacete, the spotlight fell directly on the president. Did Pérez choose to protect the players instead of backing his coach, as many inside the club believe? Alonso arrived after 2 outstanding seasons at Leverkusen, with trophies and a clear football identity. Yet he was given almost nothing to work with. No proper transfer window.
Y Mastantuono, vale, ha metido un gol, chaval. Pero la segunda parte, no es, que yo te he visto los highlights del River Plate, que empiezo a pensar que lo ha hecho la inteligencia artificial.
No chance to fix an aging, unbalanced and clearly incomplete squad. What makes this even harder to justify is the numbers. Xabi Alonso is dismissed with the exact same record that Hansi Flick posted in his first 34 matches at Barcelona. 24 wins, 4 draws, 6 defeats.
No, this is football, and it's not my business. But at the end, what I can say, I have a really good relationship with Xabi. We met us in Leverkusen when I was the national coach, and I always stay in contact with him, and he's a fantastic coach. And this is football. We have to accept these things, and I wish him all the best. And I think he will get a new one and big project for him and also his team. And so it's football. It's like that. So we have to continue. We have to think about what we can do better, but he's a fantastic coach and also have a great future.
Those figures were considered the foundation of a winning project in Barcelona. In Madrid, they were used as an excuse to pull the plug. Modern football is impatient, yes, but impatience does not always mean intelligence. Look at Mikel Arteta at Arsenal. His first season was messy, the team struggled, but the club trusted the process, gave him time, allowed him to shape the squad. The result is a team that now competes at the very top. Time matters if you allow it to exist. Whoever comes next to the Bernabeu bench will face the same problems. Even if it is Jurgen Klopp, he will not fix this in 6 months.
And what we can reveal is that Jurgen Klopp is still a candidate for Real Madrid in case that they decide to appoint a new manager in the summer. And this is much more important.
This squad no longer scares Europe the way it once did. First, Florentino must choose the right manager, but more importantly, he must let that manager build the team according to his own vision, not the president's. As we said before, Madridismo is asking for planning and common sense. And right now, both are missing. The president decides too much, interferes too often, and gets it wrong more frequently than ever. This story feels painfully familiar. Between 2004 and 2006, during the original Galacticos era, Madrid had Zidane, Beckham, Ronaldo and Figo, and still everything collapsed. 3 seasons without trophies, dressing room wars, institutional chaos. Florentino lost control and resigned in 2006. In Spain, it is remembered as one of the darkest crises in the club's history. That ghost has returned. The label Galacticos 2.0 was reborn with the arrival of Kylian Mbappe, Florentino's ultimate obsession. And once again, the same mistake is being repeated. Too much pampering of stars, too much power handed to players. A belief that football can be won without balance, without midfield control, without profiles like Kroos, Modric, Pedri, Vitinha or Rodri. Players Madrid simply do not have. Florentino Pérez has fallen into the same trap that forced him out before, believing he knows football better than everyone else, trusting individual brilliance over structure, choosing ego over planning. These are dark days for Real Madrid. The bench has no stability.
Echaron a Ancelotti porque no valía, echaron a Xabi Alonso porque no valía. Hoy Arbeloa no ha tenido culpa, pero los han eliminado. Pues aquí hay 2 reflexiones. Los que siguen son los jugadores y el que está en el palco. Que, por cierto, no descarto que el sábado se siente él a dirigir ya el Madrid frente al Levante. Porque ya vale de excusas de que si la culpa es de los entrenadores, de que si los métodos son los mismos jugadores que, lo dije ayer y te lo vuelvo a decir hoy, la cultura del esfuerzo y del trabajo hace mucho que la han olvidado. El entrenador que les aprieta no les gusta. Cuando no están de acuerdo con lo que pasa, van a llorar al presidente y el presidente se lo consiente.
The project has no direction, and even the presidency, once untouchable, is now being openly questioned. Now we have to talk about the players, because this crisis is not only about the boardroom. There is one Real Madrid before the return of Jude Bellingham, and a very different one after the Englishman came back into the starting 11. The high press that Xabi Alonso demanded, the intensity that defined his first weeks in charge, has completely disappeared. Bellingham looks lost. He does not seem sure of his role on the pitch, and worse, he does not appear to fully understand what his coach is asking from him. Xabi wants Bellingham to be the link between midfield and attack, the connector, the player who releases Vinicius Jr. and Kylian Mbappe into space. But Jude plays with the instincts of a forward. He wants to arrive in the box, not organise from between the lines. And right now, he is not following the tactical script. The problem goes deeper. Jude does not press. Vinicius does not press. Mbappe does not press. And when your entire front line ignores the coach's pressing triggers, rivals walk the ball out from the back with ease. On top of that, Bellingham's free roll breaks any attacking structure. Madrid attack without patterns, without timing, and defenders can read them from a mile away. Then there is Federico Valverde. His refusal to play where the coach asked created another crack. Since the return of Trent Alexander-Arnold, Valverde has been pushed back into central midfield. And this is arguably the worst version of Valverde we have seen in a Madrid shirt. Inside the club, many are starting to link his drop in form to his deteriorating relationship with the manager. Valverde is at his best on the flank, with space to run, with freedom to arrive in the box. Instead, he now looks stranded in the middle, unsure of his positioning and responsibilities. He wears Toni Kroos's number 8, but anyone who thought he could replace Kroos fundamentally misunderstood what Kroos represented, and Trent's case only adds fuel to the fire. His arrival was more a boardroom decision than a sporting request. Xabi Alonso did not ask for him. The Englishman has struggled badly to adapt. Defensively, he is exposed. He breaks the team's shape and leaves gaps behind him. His greatest weapon is his right foot, his ability to deliver dangerous crosses. But there is a brutal irony here. Madrid's only true aerial finisher is Gonzalo Garcia, and he sits on the bench whenever Mbappe starts. Add to that Franco Mastantuono, who looks like he left his football back at the Monumental in Argentina. The talent is there, but right now it is nowhere to be seen. Yes, Florentino Pérez is the main culprit, for poor planning, for overstepping into areas that are not his, for refusing to respect serious processes. But the players cannot escape responsibility either. They cannot live off Mbappe's goals alone. Football does not work like that anymore. This has to be a collective. Just ask Luis Enrique and his Paris Saint-Germain. What happened when Kylian left?
Creo que lo voy a mejorar el siguiente año, sin ninguna duda. Porque el hecho de tener un jugador que se movía por donde él quería implica que hay situaciones de juego que yo no controlo. El año que viene las voy a controlar todas. Todas, sin excepción.
A sextuple. Nothing more. Nothing less. This Real Madrid are not the new Galacticos. They need to come back down to earth. And Florentino, along with his executives, must finally start doing things the right way.